But I am honored to be here to introduce our next session. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Amanda Bergen. I've been working with Kate for the last year at the foundation, and I'm also a mom to my daughter who has Phelan-McDermid syndrome, and her name's Hudson, and in 8 short days, she will be turning 9. But with that, I'm going to introduce our next session, which is Transitions Across the Life course. And please welcome me in introducing Dr. Lynda Lahti Anderson, research associate with extensive experience in family support and community-based disability services. As a parent and advocate, her work focuses on improving the lives of individuals with disabilities through research and training related to family support and community employment. And then we also have with us today Dr. Renata Ticha. I'm not saying it right. Ticha. I wanted to make sure I got it right. Senior research and adjunct faculty member in the educational psychology at the University of Minnesota. Dr. Ticha has extensive work in the development, implementation, and research of assessments and interventions for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, has made significant contributions to the field. With that, please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
We are actually going to stand here so we can see our slides. What we're going to talk about today is a little bit about life course theory or life course perspective and why it's important and why it matters to transitions. Renata is going to share some work she did about the transition model here in Minnesota, and then we're going to talk about how to apply this in life so you can take something home to put into practice. How many of you have ever heard of charting the life course? That's what we're going to talk about. I'm excited some people know about it. It's one of my favorite things. So we're going to start with a little bit about what a life course perspective or the life course theory actually is. And it's really sort of obvious, I think. But we have stages in life. We have infancy and early childhood and move into adulthood and aging. And we all go through these stages. All these stages have different developmental tasks. And all of these stages build on the stages we had before. So if we think about what's coming ahead, we can be prepared. And life has transitions, always transitions. Some are big. Some of you may have children who are at the age where you're planning adulthood. They're in transition in school, and that's a really big transition. That's kind of scary. But in my household, we have a multi-generational family, and my granddaughter is transitioning to high school from middle school, and that's a big deal. She has learning disabilities and some other support needs, and so that's kind of scary. And my husband has transitioned to retirement, and so we have big things, big changes going on, and that's part of life too. We always have transitions. All of our life happens in a social context, so we all live in the context of our family and communities, and they shape our beliefs about how life should look. They affect our choices of things that happen in life and what we believe and value, and those also affect transitions in the life course. And then we all have choices and constraints. And we make one choice that may eliminate another choice. I will never be an opera singer because I can't carry a tune. That's a constraint I have. It could be a life choice. Doesn't matter. Not going to happen. And so those are also things we think about when we think about thinking about the life course perspective is what constraints do we have, but what choices can we make? And if we make a choice, what does it mean in terms of other choices that we might want to make? And it's helpful to think of things in a life course perspective because we can plan ahead. So a really easy example that I often use with charting the life course is employment. If we want our children to work when they get older, they start with chores when they're younger and learn these skills along the way. And getting these opportunities to practice in situations where they don't matter. I am the guardian for a woman who's almost 60 who grew up in a very different world for people with disabilities that was very segregated. And she never had all those opportunities that we hope young people today get, whether or not they have a disability. And so she wants to get a job, but has zero experience in life about what to go about doing that and what's out there even. And so thinking ahead and thinking out what skills and knowledge people need to have for whatever their vision of a life is really an important part of the life course perspective. We think about developmental needs along the stages, and we all have different developmental needs, but thinking in a life course perspective helps us think about what needs people will have at a certain age and how we can be prepared for that. Thinking about transitions that are going to happen and talking about it helps families be ready. It can reduce stress. It can help us be gelled together, because it's not just about one person, it's about the family as a system. And that's one of the things we'll talk about is where I think Charting the Life Course builds on a really strong way on person-centered thinking and planning, is that it's the whole family. Everybody needs to have a plan. Everybody's plans need to work together for it all to work, or it doesn't work very well. And so we'll get into more of this as we get into the Charting the Life Course framework. And now Renata.
Thank you, Lynda. So I'm going to talk about how many of you here are from Minnesota? Okay, so I'm going to talk about a project that is Minnesota-based, but it's one of 7 projects funded nationally, so there are other similar ones around. And the point of the project is basically, so transition for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities is written into the education law and also into the vocational law. But it's fine that it's in the law and it's wonderful. But if you go into transition programs or high schools for children and young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, the implementation is very diverse. In some programs it works really well. In some programs it's not really happening very effectively. And so we were tasked to really look at what does transition look like in programs in Minnesota, and what are some of the barriers, challenges, what's working really well. This is just to highlight that we have many partners on this work, which is 3 state departments: Minnesota Department of Education, Minnesota Department of Human Services, Department of Employment and Economic Development, and then advocacy agencies, and of course the transition programs and school districts that administer or instruct in the transition programs. In Minnesota, we have some wonderful resources for disability and transition on the Disability Hub Minnesota. If you go onto the website, there's a lot of good information. One of which is this transition framework. Now, according to the law, educational and vocational, there's a lot of focus on transition to employment, of course, for young adults with disabilities, to independent living, such as housing, leisure activities, and post-secondary education, be it college, be it internships. And so the state of Minnesota has put a lot of energy into this framework, and our work at the University of Minnesota has been to really see how is it implemented, how is it working for young adults, teachers, and parents. And so I'm going to share with you just some findings from what students told us, parents told us, staff told us. And these photos are actually from our project. We gave young adults with disabilities cameras for 2 weeks. And we asked them to document their experiences with transition through their own eyes. And so I'll point out some things as I go. So we were really asking, what are some of the strengths during the transition programs for youth, parents, and staff? And we also asking, what are some of the areas that need to improve to better transition to adulthood? Now, when we visited the programs, we realized that, unlike in many other countries around the world, transition means a lot of the times being in a separate transition building. So, for example, in Minneapolis, there is a program called Transition Plus, and that's a building that's called a transition program. And while it's tasked to support transition to adulthood and into the community, it is kind of like an institution. It's like a building that the students are stuck at and don't get out that much. We also found that there are some really good opportunities for work-based learning, for advocacy, But oftentimes there is a limitation with transportation in many programs. For example, in northern Minnesota, where to get to employment sites, get to programs to learn, how to shop or how to make friends. And there are also very different approaches to curricula. Some programs have a curriculum, some programs don't have a curriculum, some programs have highly trained teachers, some don't. So there's a lot of diversity. So for your young adults, when you're exploring transition programs, I think there's a lot of research to be done to find out what is available in your area, what's working well and what is not. So we interviewed family members like yourselves about the experience with transition with a young adult with intellectual or developmental disability, and really found that, like what we are doing here, a lot of the supports were among the parents themselves. So the parent networks were critical for them. The staff who were not teachers, like I'm sure you work with paraeducators, teaching assistants, it could be also work-based coordinators, oftentimes did not have access to information like teachers had. So if you have an IEP or a transition plan for a young adult, a lot of the staff really did not even have access to see what the goals and objectives were on those plans. And there was a lot of limitation as far as job coach training. There were a lack of job coaches to work with young adults as they were trying different jobs in the community. And I already mentioned the sort of barrier in transportation. Now the other thing, and you probably can speak to this more than I can, but when we work with employers or work with the transition programs who work with employers in the areas, the employers know very little about disabilities. And so a lot of the work we do and work with these programs is to educate employers what talents and strengths young adults with disabilities can contribute and that they can be a really meaningful part of workforce. Now, we also interviewed about 30 students with intellectual and developmental disabilities about their experience during transition. And one of the things we found is that they had a lot of hopes and dreams for employment or for living, after high school. But the sad part was that their dreams often didn't match what they were learning at school. And so I'm sure you have your own examples, but for example, one of the young women said she would like to be a vet assistant. And so she said, I love animals, I really would like to work with a veterinarian. So I asked her, well, what are you doing now to kind of get ready and prepare and understand what that meant? And she said, well, I work at the Goodwill 3 times a week. And so there was a lot of these examples of being prepared for something that the students didn't want to do. And so when you are working or talking with transition teachers and the programs, it's really important to make sure that whatever your young adult is aspiring to, there is an alignment in the individualized plans and work that's being prepared. Now, some of the students were really happy in their programs. This is a quote from one of the students. They said the transition for them was no bells, no homework, no periods, no rush. And they were comparing their experience to their high school program. And so they said the transition years really have helped them to get ready for adulthood. As you know, in the transition time, it's a really nice time to prepare for functional skills, for skills that are really useful for all of us, becoming adults, learning to cook, make your schedule, figuring out how transportation works in the community. So usually the programs have good resources for that. Now, one of the things that's clear in Minnesota and other states is that there is very, very huge emphasis on employment, which makes sense because employment is very important for many different reasons. Minnesota has an E1MN initiative where they are supporting employment through education, through vocational rehabilitation. But there is not a lot of attention given, even though it's getting better, to transitioning to post-secondary education. So if you think about your own family, how many of you have thought of potentially your young adult transitioning to some kind of a post-secondary education, be it college, be it university, be it some kind of a training program? Just give me a raise of hands. Very, very few. Okay. So there are many initiatives where universities and colleges and community colleges are getting better at supporting students with intellectual and developmental disabilities to get additional training to then be able to do maybe a better job or a job that they want. So it's really worth exploring in your own areas, in your own states. And the other lack that we found in those programs is lack of attention to really explaining to students what are their rights and how to advocate for themselves. So there are many organizations who do that, but it should be part of this transition initiative. And so, again, when you're exploring your own options, making sure that those programs are well equipped to support the rights and advocacy and other things apart from transition to employment. So I'm just going to give you a few examples from the photo opportunity that we gave the students with their cameras. And their task was to map or to show us or to their parents, to their teachers, what transition meant to them. So on the left, somebody took a photo of a house. And when asked what it meant to them, they said, basically, somebody living in there doing everyday stuff, whether it's lawn work, housework, or getting a good night's sleep, it's really important for rest after work and staying with family. And so they were really emphasizing this kind of the normality of their life, that it didn't, you wouldn't even know that somebody with a disability said that. It just they wanted to emphasize, they wanted to have a life like everybody else. The picture on the right, the hoop, and they explained, it's my favorite hobby and what I do when I have free time. So again, emphasizing that they have hobbies, they would like to spend their free time in a meaningful way. Then there's another one on the right. Somebody took a photo of a sculpture, and they explained it's learning differently, that you could do paper with a computer or something, maybe sculpturing. So again, they wanted to use their creative talents to do something during the time of transitioning to adulthood. So those are just really nice examples of thinking outside of the box and thinking about, well, everybody, you or me, or have goals and dreams that are very diverse. So this is just, once we did the photo project with the students, we had an exhibit at our university together with students with intellectual and developmental disabilities from Singapore and from the Czech Republic. And we had the community come and look at the photos and had a conversation with the students about their experiences. And we have that still on the website if you're interested. This is just from the exhibit. It was a very powerful experience, everybody sharing their experience of transition. Just to summarize, before I give the mic back to Lynda, one of the things that's happening too, there is not a lot of research and knowledge currently in the field about how what we are doing for young adults with disabilities is actually working to support them into transition to employment, post-secondary education, to leisure activities. So better data collection is needed. There's also not a lot of emphasis, what students were telling us, on how the students are really feeling. It's all about, have you learned this? Have you done that? Have you been to Goodwill to do your work-based learning experience? So they were telling us that they really struggle sometimes with stress, and so really focusing on how can we support the students in managing stress, having hobbies, making friends was something that they were emphasizing. Also diversifying work-based learning opportunities. So many times the opportunities are Goodwill, grocery store, gardening, right? So there's not of diversity in the opportunities for employment, and so that's another another work that we are doing to work with employers to really understand that young adults can contribute in other fields, for example, IT. And then the other thing we have learned is there's not a lot of collaboration between many times the school district and vocational rehabilitation and advocacy organizations. So that's something that we are trying to improve in Minnesota. I put on where Lynda put the handouts, I also we did a special issue of our Impact magazine on transition around the world. You're free to take a copy if you're interested. And thank you, and we'll do questions at the very end after Lynda is finished as well.
I understand there's a coffee break at 11, so we will take the coffee break, just so you know. So don't worry, they'll get it. I'm watching my clock. Okay, so we're going to talk now about charting the life course. This is a high level. When I do introductory sessions with family groups, we'll do 3 weeks with an hour and a half to 2 hours per session. So you're getting a third, so really high level. So the fundamental framework core belief of charting the life course is that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. And that's a fundamental belief that you'll see how it shapes how charting the life course can help people think about supports and services and how to make those work for people to live the life that they envision. So I want to talk a little bit about charting the life course. It was started in the state of Missouri by family members of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and self-advocates as a way to expand on person-centered planning and thinking. There's a group thought there's things missing. We need some new tools or a framework to think about things. And so it has a lot of purposes. When you come back from break, there's some things on the back table to grab. There's some tools that come with it that you can use, but it really isn't about the tools. It's not about the pieces of paper. It's about conversations you can have and how you can use it. That really matters. You don't need the paper, but I brought it. So it can be used to explore life possibilities. Like, what's your vision? What's the vision your child has as they get older for their future? What does a good life look for them? And they can explore how do we get there? Can we get there? How can we get close to there? So one of my coworkers who has also works with charting the life course has a son who has he lives with autism, and he really wants to be a pilot. And so they've took that, that's really important to him, and found ways for him to be involved in aviation without necessarily having to fly a plane, but he gets to be involved, and it took some creative work to do that, but he's getting to kind of reach his vision of what he wanted to do. It's a way to share ideas, to think about navigating the future, setting expectations, and so if you're thinking ahead and planning ahead, you can think about expectations, how we get there, as opposed to, oh my gosh, you're 22 and you need a job, what are we going to do? And then it's really great for problem solving, and there's a particular tool for that I will share. We'll spend a lot of time on that because that's everybody's favorite tool. And there we go. So I just want to say that there's a community of practice at the state level with charting the life course, and 21 states in the U.S. are building this into their framework of how they provide supports and services to people. I can't remember all 21, but I know a couple examples. Indiana is doing great work. If you live in Indiana, check out what they're doing. Ohio. But they're thinking how they think differently about how families and individuals get support. So the framework starts with the individual. It's a person-centered way of thinking. So the individual is the center of the conversation and the planning, but understanding that people live in the context of their family and their communities, and that's an important part of the framework, and that we all live with other people, and we all have to work or get along together, and we support each other, and there's reciprocal roles and relationships that we all have in these communities and families that we belong to. The other point about this that in the work we do at ICI is one of the things we look at is where people are living, and 80% of people with intellectual disability live with their families. Even those who are getting formal supports and services, over half still live with their families, and so leaving families out of the picture is leaving a big part of everything out of the picture. So that's why it's really important. We all have these little circle around that. The words are so small, I'm sorry about that. But we have these life domains that we have every day. So it's daily life and employment. It's social networking, having a social network and a spirituality and having our social and emotional needs met. Safety and security, community living, healthy living, and advocacy and engagement. And we all get supports and services in those parts of our lives. We all have supports. And all those things kind of need to be in balance. They all affect each other. If somebody's health isn't doing well, something else is probably not doing well. So those are important to think about when we're planning for the future. Like, how are all these needs going to be met for somebody as we go through life? And it looks differently at different parts of life, right? I mean, what a healthy living looks like for a 4-year-old is going to be really different than what it might look like for a 64-year-old. We all have goods and services that we need to get through life. These are things that we buy, things that we access in our communities. And so in charting the life course, they're split into 3 buckets. And so we have goods and services. Those are the things you buy. It could be going to the post office and getting a stamp. It's your doctor's office. And it's also disability-specific supports fall into that. There's discovery and navigation. Where do we get the information we need to make decisions? Where, who can we go to if we need help understanding a system? And some of you may have more experience, depending on the age of your children, and navigating a disability and special education systems, and they don't work together, and they don't talk to each other, and they're complicated, and it seems like you need to know magical words to make anything work. And so having navigation and support for families and individuals with disabilities is a really important thing. And then connecting and networking. It's really nice and helpful for a lot of people to know other people who are walking in their shoes a little bit. It's helpful, families getting together and talking to each other and learning from each other. And so, but we all need that in all parts of our lives. Who can we go to for connections and social networks? And then we have ways we get supports. And it's all turns into a support star, which is one of the things we're going to look at in a little bit. So we all have our own personal strengths and assets, and those are things we can develop along the way too as we move through life, and we may say, oh, I really want to do this thing, I need to learn how to do this. We all have relationships, and those are places we get support and services. Technology is an important support, and it's becoming a better and better support for people along the way. Cell phones are amazing. And have changed the lives of some people with disabilities that I know. My friend Orapat, her son has autism. He's like 30 now, I think. And a cell phone has changed his life. He is much more independent than he ever would have been without it. He has learned to use it to order rides, to make appointments, to use the navigation so he can go places without getting lost. And his mom can track him to make sure that he really is where she thinks he's supposed to be and that he's safe. And it's changed his life. I don't think he would have had as much freedom as he has without it. It's been a life-changing thing for him. And then we have community-based supports and services, and those are the things that we can all use. It's the Y, it's the library, it's our doctor's offices, it's all those things that everybody in the community can use. And then the final category of supports and services are eligibility specific. And so those could be eligibility based on age, based on income, based on disability status. The idea is that a person's supports should include all of those and not rely only on one. If you rely only on eligibility specific supports, they often kind of become a barrier around the person that can prevent or really make it difficult to have sort of complete full inclusion and participation in people's communities. Relying solely on family can be difficult because parents age. Families don't always live close to each other. But so having a integrated support plan that includes all the things can really help people move forward in a way that might work better for families, and we will explore that in a little bit. And then finally, the final principle of charting the life course is it's a life course way of thinking. And so we have all these stages of life that we move through, and we transition from one to the other. Some of these stages include big life transitions like moving into adulthood, or retiring from work, or even starting school when you're a little kid, are all important. And that all of the things that happen at the previous stages affect our transition and our life course. It may be heading towards a way we don't want. It may be heading away from a way we want to, or how we envision our lives. And we can think about how we can change our trajectory a little bit. So these are the domains. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. These are the domains that we all need to think about as we're thinking about moving through life and transition. So daily life and employment could be school when you're a kid. It's employment when you're older. It could be volunteering. Community living includes where you live, your transportation, your access to the community, social and spirituality. It's friends, relationships, leisure activities. And that's a really important one to think about as people move into adulthood, and how to help people keep their social connections once they're in adulthood. A lot of, when I've talked to families and we work on things together, a lot of parents have sort of like leaving transition and moving to adulthood is like falling off a cliff. All of the supports that exist in school and people's friend networks and things are there, and then they're not. And so how can we be planful about making sure people keep friends and relationships as they move through adulthood, particularly for older adults who grew up in a really more segregated world. They're only people in their lives are paid to be there, and we don't want our family members to be there, so sort of being planful about how we support relationships so that people can have sort of authentic relationships with people who not only care for them, but care about them. That's a really important thing that they care about, like who knows your family stories and who understands what's important to you, and who has those memories with you of your life that you can talk about. That's important for people. Safety and security, healthy living, and that's all those, being well, getting to appointments and making sure all the things are met. And then advocacy engagement. And as Renata said, it's really important for people to learn how to advocate for themselves. And it starts as a little kid. Little toddlers and little kids learn to say no. And so how are we helping people learn the skills to whatever level they're able to learn those skills? And this is what I was talking about. I jumped ahead. So what we're hoping for is not this one here. I think there's an arrow, I think. So not this. So where the services sort of wrap around the person and they kind of it makes a little barrier. What we want is sort of the services to be integrated throughout life, the kinds of services and supports you need to make whatever is happening there possible. And it doesn't mean there's no disability supports, but you use them to support the other kinds of supports. They sort of fill in the gaps as opposed to being the main thing. All right. And so this is just a slide I use when I talk to self-advocates about the trajectory. So if you're unathletic like me, you're going to miss the basket without a lot of practice, and so your trajectory doesn't go where you want it to go. There's no planning, there's no preparation. It's going to miss the basket. But if you're thinking ahead about what your vision is and what you would like, and you can sort of plan your trajectory and who's going to help you get there, maybe you'll get lucky and you'll hit the basket. And more than lucky, if you practice and hit the basket, you'll hit the basket. But that's sort of what the trajectory is. It's that path that you're taking. So I want you to think about, I'm going to give you a minute or two here, think about your vision of a good life. So it could be for you, your family member. Like, if it was a good life, what would be a part of that? You don't have to, say it out loud. I'll ask people to volunteer, and you volunteer what is important to you if you want to. But just think, I'm going to give you a minute. What's the vision of what you want? What would a good life look for your family, for a particular family member, for you? And I'll just think about it for a minute, then I'll ask for answers. Anybody want to share? What would be in a good life for you? Go ahead.
For our daughter to be socially active after high school.
Okay. Great. Having friends. Yeah. What else? Looks like a good life. Having meaningful things to do during your day. Being safe and happy. Yep. Anybody else have any thoughts? Oh, I forgot that. I missed a slide. So I forgot to put a slide here. There's a slide with a gray cloud that we're going to pretend is there now. So what don't you want? Like what, if you look in the future and say, yep, we definitely don't want that to happen. Sometimes the what we don't want to happen is easier for people than the what we do want to happen. So pretend that's a gray cloud. What don't you want for the future? What doesn't look like a good life? Illness? Okay, yep. Can you say that? Multiple changes. So a little stability would be a better, so lots of changes is not a good life, okay. Okay, seclusion would be not a good, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So vulnerability, so not being able to communicate wants and needs, and if somebody was taking advantage or being unkind, don't want that in the future. Yep. Anything else? Okay. So this is a charting the life course trajectory, and as I just sort of reiterate some of the things I've already talked about, that the experiences that we have can help us get to where we want, or can they get us to where we don't want? And if we think about where we want, it's easier to think about what kind of supports and services need to be in place to get there, what kind of experiences people need to have, what kind of skills people need to learn. And it's easier to get to what we don't want if we sort of don't plan ahead. That's not to say that you can do everything. You think you're, everything, quote, right? Things happen in life, and then you have to rethink your trajectory. People get sick, people lose jobs, and your trajectory may be humming along the way you want it. Something happens unexpected, and you have to readjust and come up with a new trajectory. But generally, if you're thinking about where you want to go, it's easier to get there. So one of the things that Charting the Life course has are these are actually booklets for every stage of life, starting with infancy all the way through aging and retirement, that focus on a particular life stage. And so they ask questions as sort of anticipatory guidance, like these groups of families and self-advocates sort of sat down and asked themselves and each other, what do you need to know to move forward? And so all of these books have, for every life domain, questions. So this is, on the resources, there's ways to get to this. I don't expect you to read all this tiny print. But so, for example, in thinking about adulthood and in transition and moving to adulthood, there's in the daily life and employment, it asks, what's in the transition plan, my transition plan that's helping me move into adulthood, that prepares me for life after school ends? Does my transition plan include work or volunteer experience, so I can learn what kinds of things I like to do and don't like to do and get experience? What supports will I need for work or other daytime activities? Some people choose not to work or don't work for whatever reason, but they should still have meaningful activities during their day that are important to them. Like people with disabilities, even people with higher support needs, should have things in their life that they do during the day that brings them pleasure. And joy shouldn't be just sitting sort of secluded in a room somewhere. So thinking about what kind of supports people need to have engagement in their life, in their community, and to be able to participate is part of that sort of that planning for adulthood. This is the support star. So personal strengths and assets, those are the things that we have. It's our skills, it's our personal abilities, it's our life experiences, it's things we're good at, it's things people like and admire about us, and it's all of the resources that we bring as people to the situation. And we all have resources, we all have strengths, we all have talents, and some things we can develop that we don't have yet. The relationships, these are the things that our family relationships, our close relationships, but these also include other kinds of relationships. So it could be acquaintances, it could be neighbors, it could be direct support professionals. There may be people that we interact with on a regular basis, but we not fall into friend category. So I have an example of that. I got my PhD late in life, and so a few years ago I did my dissertation, and I used a photo process like Renata used in her project, and asked the people who were participating in this to take pictures of things that made them feel happy and healthy. And one of the women took a picture of Starbucks, and not because she likes coffee, although she likes coffee, but because it's a Starbucks that she could walk to, so it's really accessible. And she took it because of the people she knows there. She goes always at the same time and knows the regulars, and they know her. And she says like, cheers, like everybody knows my name, right? So it's a place of belonging. And so those are when we think about relationships, we think more broadly like our intimate or family relationships. But also the thing that's important to think about is reciprocal relationships, and so that people are recognizing the things that people bring to relationships as well as things that we give people. I'm going to move over to technology. So I gave the cell phone example earlier. There's smart home technology. My friend, her son has seizures at night, so he has a seizure alert pad, so that he doesn't have to have somebody awake all night watching him. There's just so many AIs. It could be very promising or very awful, depending on which way it goes, but it could really change lives for a lot of people. And then there's community-based, and so those are the things I talked about already. So I'm thinking about using those first. So as an example, I'll use my son for that one. He has Tourette syndrome, and he had, as part of the probably significant motor delays and some other stuff. And so when he was in first grade, he really didn't know how to run yet. And so the gym teacher and I had should he go to physical therapy? Because he really was really behind. He didn't learn to ride a bike until he was in middle school, so he was really behind motor-wise. But we decided instead to do Taekwondo. And we did that because of the patterns that they have to learn. We even do the same physical motor movements over and over and over again until you as you learn these patterns and you move through them, and they get more complex. And plus it was the social thing. He was with other kids his age. He has learning disabilities. There's a lot of structure. There's everything about it was things that appealed to me. It was in our community. It was just sort of everything that kind of touched what I think is important for life. And so it was hard. he had to go in for remedial Taekwondo lessons with the instructor before class started for everybody else. He spent a lot of time practicing. And I would say of all the decisions I made as a parent, that has been my top 5 of important things I did right. That was life-changing for him. He actually went on and got a black belt, and it changed his mind-body connection and how his mind communicated with his body, and kind of made him, I'm sure, a different person than he would have been without it. But that's where we went first. If it hadn't worked, then we would have tried physical therapy, but let's try the thing that all the other kids do first, and that's sort of where we went with that. Not to say that, if physical therapy was needed, we would have done it, but I wanted to try this other thing first that also touched on all those important aspects of life. And then there's eligibility specific, and so it's the things that we get because of where we live, our income, our age, whether or not we have a disability or employment status, and those are also important. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of those. They are important, but relying on those in exclusion of everything else can be really limiting to people's lives. Okay, so I'm trying to think. Coffee is at 11. I'm going to talk about this a little bit, and then it'll be close to 11, and we'll come back. We're going to work on this, and so when you come back, grab the things off the table back there. So I'll explain it. You can have your break, and then we'll come back and actually do some work thinking about these things. So these 2 pages here are kind of a 1-page profile that includes all of the parts of a Charting the Life course, a lot of the Charting the Life course tools. So it starts over here with the support star, and it talks about, and so you fill in sort of you could do it generally for a person. I have this arrow thing. I've never used one of these before, so it's very fancy for me. So you can do this like a life domain. So we're going to focus on health. So what is Nick's health needs? And so that could be there, and then all the supports he would need around his health. So relationships could be his doctor, for example, or it could be a physical therapist, eligibility specific, or it could be broader for a person. So what are all the supports and services Mary needs to live her best life? And then as part of this 1-page profile, it has, you can share this with people, so you can tell people about the person you're doing this for. So what do people like and admire about me, what's important to me, and how best to support me? Which was something that if you've done a person-centered plan is in a person-centered plan. And these are great tools to use if you work with direct support professionals or PCAs or people are coming in and providing supports, that to have this available, that they can, as they come in and learn, they can learn about the person they're supporting in a way that's, you're making sure you're hitting the high points. And then the other thing, we have a trajectory. So what is the vision? What is a person's vision for their life, and what don't they want? And then when we're thinking about planning, we can think about past experiences, sort of what worked and what hasn't worked, and what we need to move forward to get to this part. I didn't bring one, but there's a split star also that has the things we have now and the things we're going to need, which is really helpful for planning for the future as well. Any questions about this so far? Okay. I'm gonna get you just started thinking. We'll talk about resources, then when we come back, we'll do the work. I don't want to have you start on the work now because we're break's getting close. But there's a resource page back there, and so the Charting the Life course, that's called the Life Course Nexus, which is their website, has all of the tools that I shared today, plus a bazillion other ones. It will have all these anticipatory guidance things. It has videos about how you can use the framework to articulate what you want and need. It's great for advocacy. You can take this and say, this is what we want. These are the supports we have. These are the supports we need. What do we got to do to make this happen? If you have case managers or special ed coordinators or whatever. It's great for advocacy. The Star Work's great for problem solving. And then I'm going to put a plug in like Renata did for Disability Hub. Anybody can use it. You don't have to be in Minnesota. They have all of the Charting the Life course tools and how to use them. But one of the things they have is they have a vault that's a secure place with a password where you can store these things and share them with other people who you think should have access to that information. Other states use Minnesota's Disability Hub. They tell people to use this because apparently it's better than what their states have. So it's a useful tool. So I'll put that out there. So what I want you to think about, we'll just take a little break early. And then maybe come back like at 11:05. It'll have you a chance to use restrooms and get coffee and everything. Is I want you to just start thinking. We're gonna work on this. This trajectory business here first, and just start thinking of a vision. I have 2 different of these versions of these back there. One is this one. There's one that's focused specifically on caregiver well-being. So if you want to do one for yourself, pick that one. Well, pick them both up, but you could work on that one, because I know from working with families is you probably are really bad about taking care of yourselves. So maybe you want to spend today thinking about yourself and how you can treat yourself well. And so we will come back at 11:05. It's probably 15 minutes to stretch and move around and get your coffee. And then when you come back, grab those papers off the back table. All right. Let's talk about how was this hard? Was it not hard? Is the vision of what a good life is hard to think about? Sometimes it's easier to think about what you don't want. Sometimes we start with that and then go to what you do want after that. So what are past experiences do you think that your family or your family members had that are heading towards the path that gets them the life that you think that they want to have? Anything, gosh, they've had a great teacher in elementary school that set them on a path, or gosh, they've got a good friend, or their siblings are awesome, or I don't know. What are some past experiences that are moving people on the trajectory you want? Oh, that's great. Super. Go ahead, yeah.
We had a great experience. Izzy had a great experience in her elementary school,
Yeah.
Where she would spend time with typical peers.
Yep.
And then as we were out in the community, typical peers would come up and say hi to her.
Yeah.
And everybody knew her.
Yeah.
So it was just a great experience for us as parents.
Yeah.
As friends. And
Yeah.
like our other children also had.
Yeah. Yeah. And those peers, especially when you're kids, those peers are such important relationships, and to get to have them, and so that's such an important part of growing up. What other experiences like, oh, that really didn't move us on the path? If you want to share it, some of those are painful. You don't have to share any of those, but if there's anything, oh, we could do that different. Or the system could do that better, or differently, or something. Is any of those that came up? Go ahead.
We're just not crazy about it, but a caregiver just stays home.
Yeah. You want our family members to be out there and involved in life and doing things that are meaningful to them, right? Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
pretty much nonverbal. He doesn't say something.
Yeah.
Really goes to manage the caregiver's coach.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's great, because expectations are everything, right? We all live up or down to the expectations people have of us. So having those people in our lives and our family members' lives who see big things for us are so important, right? Anything else? All right, so we're going to go back to that star. The star's the best. I love the star. So let's think about, let's work through one of these together, the star. Let's talk about this. Let's pick a life domain. Let's do the social life domain. So having friends and being part of our community is important to our health and our mental health and our happiness. It's sort of, as human beings, that's where we need social connection. So let's talk about that. So our vision for our family member is to be an authentic part of their community, not getting in a van with a bunch of other people and driving through McDonald's. Like that's not. We had an outing today. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I'm going someplace and being with people. Let's talk about that. So let's think about doing something social with peers. So thinking about personal strengths and assets. What kind of personal strengths and assets might individuals have that would help them in that endeavor?
Our daughter enjoys saying hi to
Okay. Okay. Being friendly, outgoing.
very
Yep.
friendly,
Yep.
been, just with personal experience of having a loved one in a nursing home,
Mm-hmm.
that happiness really carries over.
Yeah.
Because she would say hi to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she was getting pleasure at saying hi, but she was also contributing. Like, she's a contributing member of that community at that time because there's probably people are probably really happy that somebody was saying hi to them. So, what else? Other. Okay. That's huge. Yeah, that's great. Any other personal strengths or what are things like? I mean, I think developmentally. So we have some younger people here. Like, what kind of skills do you think people might need to get as they grow into adulthood to be? Like, what do you think? Oh, we still need to teach her this because she's 7, 8, younger than that? 9. Okay, 9. Okay. I'm not good at judging young ages anymore, but so 9-year-olds need to learn things. They're still new to the world. What kinds of things might people need help learning skills of personal strengths? So, like as she gets older, she can. Say that again. Being determined. Waiting. Being. Yep. Waiting. Some of us still need to learn that part, but. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 Yep. Not everybody has a bigger bubble. If you live in Minnesota, your bubble's about this big, and you better stay arm's way, but yeah. So learning those social things and that. The peers are great for that, especially if you have good, kind peers. They can sort of say, "Hey, step back a little," and so that's if you have the great set of peers around, that can be really helpful. Uh-huh. That's fantastic. That's perfect. Yeah, yeah. That's wonderful. Using his skill in a meaningful thing that has to happen at church. He's part of the community. I mean, that's wonderful. That's great. So let's think about relationships. What asset might people have in terms of the relationships they have that would help them be social and part of their communities? Okay. So getting open to getting new relationships, or I think that. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sure. Oh, okay. 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 Got it. Got it. Yeah. So just. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it. I missed your point. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 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 Yep. So having the right support person can be really, really beneficial to that, and having the wrong support person is not. I think peers can be really important in this, particularly if you can find a group of peers that are nice kids. I'm not saying you know what I mean, but that who want to have her as part of their friend, as child as part of their friend group, and involve them. And my granddaughter went to a very small Catholic school where there's one of her classmates has Down syndrome, and he's been there since 4 years old, and he grew up with these kids, and he's just part of the group. And there's no question. Like, everybody goes to everybody's birthday party. Everybody goes to his birthday party. Everybody talks to everybody. Everybody's on the text group chain that they have, and he's just part of the group because he's a part of the group in the beginning. and he's just part of the group. And he's going to the same high school they're all going to, and there's just no question that he would ever be in special ed. I mean, he's just going along with them, and he'll have a whole friend group in high school, and it's kind of the way school should be for kids. So it's pretty cool. But the school did a lot to foster that too. I mean, the teachers are good teachers, and they make sure everybody's kind to everybody, and everybody gets included and all that kind of stuff. So, other relationships, there's peers. Siblings can be helpful in that. All right. How about technology? Other technology things that could help people be more included and social in their community? Communication devices certainly are a huge tool. What other kinds of technology might be helpful? Tracking devices, yeah. Like I said earlier, my friend has one for her son because she needs to know where he is. What other, I'm trying to think, Renata, you work with technology stuff. What else might help people be part of social networks? Communication devices.
Yeah, so we are working, this is sort of out there, but we are working with socially assistive robots, and so it's for young adults and adults who do not feel as comfortable interacting with another human. They have a small robot called Now, and then they interact with that robot. So we have been trying that over the last 2 years. It's been very interesting, yeah.
So they're kind of learning some reciprocal social skills that hopefully you can then transfer to people over time. Yep, okay, cool. Community-based supports and services that might help people have a peer group and social activities and things in the community. Libraries, summer camps, Boys and Girls Clubs. Go ahead, yeah.
We definitely, this is not everybody, but
Yeah.
we definitely had fantastic experience here at church.
Okay,
Where
yeah.
they came to us saying, we can see there's significant needs. How can we help you?
That's great. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's really great. That's good. That's good. There's a Jewish community center that's in my neighborhood that has made the commitment to make sure that people with disabilities are fully included. And so they have a person on staff whose job is just to make sure people are included and can participate. And so they have summer camps, and they just have summer camps for everybody, but they make sure that they're set up and are accessible and have enough support so that kids with disabilities can also participate in the same summer camp as everybody else. And they have somebody, that's their job. I mean, that's their job. And it's just like, oh, more places could be like this. Imagine what the world would be like. It's just kind of really amazing. But I think, libraries are great resources. They always have stuff going on, and they welcome everybody. Lots of stuff there. Then there's eligibility specific. So having support staff that actually value this too and help people be involved in their community in real ways is important. There's probably age-related things for kids that I don't remember anymore because my kids are adults, but there probably is. Anything else on any of those categories of the support star that people can think of? So, or maybe I'll ask the question a different way. So you've talked about what's been present that's helpful. What would you like to see, in each of those areas? Oh, if only this existed, this would just be great. Okay.
Even though our daughter is 16, functional age is that of a 3-year-old.
Uh-huh.
And so going into doing activities that she would enjoy at the library
Okay.
is not something that actually works.
Because she's so much older than other kids. Yeah.
So next to a 2 or 3-year-old,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
The 2 or 3-year-old or the parent.
Yep.
I mean, their parents usually can quickly figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I will say even staff, I really don't know what to do in that
Okay.
situation, like how to handle that situation.
Okay.
If they're, even if it's just a reading time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, what do we do? And she sit at the back and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
I'll say I'm on our library's board, and so one of the things I serve on is kind of like a public access service to kind of address questions like that, to say, okay, staff needs training on making sure something that's like aimed for tots might actually feel more broadly
Yeah.
make it more welcoming. So if you have a library board, it might be worth it,
Yeah.
because they might not know, because we found that too, our library was just redone, and now they have this amazing sensory room and maker space and video room and all these things that is much more multi-age than just like reading time for the 1 to 2
Yeah.
year olds.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because it should, I mean, it
That's a
should
good
be
point. They
really,
should bring that to the board.
Yeah.
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 I mean, because we found like Barnes and Noble was even better than
Yeah.
the library was last.
Yeah, they would want to know that, because
Yeah.
they're supposed to be the
Yeah.
place for everybody.
And I bet they'd be welcoming. I mean, my experience with librarians is they're just pretty awesome. And if you approach them, they're like, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I live in this big city, and so we have really complex libraries like that with all sorts of things that appeal to all ages, and people can find things that interest them regardless. But what other things like, oh, go ahead.
That community-based, the school that Lizzie will be starting at this year, they do stuff all the way to sort of early adulthood.
Mhm.
And part of that is training, and then they partnered with some businesses in the community
Yeah.
who said, let's train some skills that they can use
Yeah.
to serve the community, and that way the community can interact
Yeah,
with them.
that's
and they
fantastic.
actually can, generate things that are good for
Yeah.
their lives and other people's lives.
That's great. That's good. Yeah.
I think that's a lot of
Yeah.
advocacy
Yep.
to form a partnership like
Yep.
that, but it can be done.
It can be done. And a lot of people are just, there's some businesses say, nope, but there are a lot of people just waiting to be asked. They don't even, like if you ask, like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And so even if I'm not saying it's your job to do all this work because you're all busy, but if you can sort of say, we want this to happen for our child, you're the professional, make it happen, advocate for us on this a little bit. But it's easy if you have sort of a way to articulate the vision in a way that it makes sense to people. I'm really bad about being really vague and expecting people to know what I'm talking about. So this helps me a lot because I can really articulate, like, my friend Mary wants a job. Her only experience with jobs that she can think about is she wants to clean tables at Burger King. She doesn't like noise, she doesn't like crowds, she doesn't like cleaning. Probably not a successful job placement, I'm guessing. So it's not my job to find her job, but it's my job to articulate that to the job developer. These are the things she likes. These are probably the environments she's not going to do well in. We had a long conversation. She's also, her natural way of being is she's just kind of a loud person, and that's just who she is, and that's fine. But they took her to Kohl's for a job interview. I'm like, why would, bad match, you don't know her at all. And so it's my job to explain, she loves cars, why aren't you looking at things related to cars? And she could probably be noisy around cars, and so so this helps me articulate, it helps us articulate, these are the things that she likes, who she is, this is her vision. How are we going to make it happen? I don't have to do all the work. I just have to be able to articulate in a way that helps the people who are going to do the work.
I think, I've worked with a lot of people with disabilities, and that thing I see, listen, which I believe it
Yeah, yeah,
most,
yeah.
it is that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of IEPs where the career goal is either completely unrealistic
Yeah.
or unrelated to the kid's interests.
Yeah.
Or so low that it's, and then the goal to help them achieve that is something like write a check. It's so dumb.
It doesn't make any sense. There's no connection. Yeah, 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 yeah.
The transition, at least the transition
Yeah.
I've seen at
Yeah.
school is
A lot of times they feel very boilerplate, we'll pull this out of the file drawer, and they're not very.
our son is starting high school, and we've been working the last 2 years. They have a cafe at the high school, and so years. Now, it's like we can point and he can push the quarter over.
Yeah.
That's the change that the student will get.
Yeah.
The high school student.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really helpful in terms of community engagement is here in Minnesota, the Children's Museum is really
Yeah.
awesome. My son was actually featured in a fundraiser, and they raised a lot of money because for the parental fee here in Minnesota, it's ridiculously expensive. It's a sliding scale. So, anyways, we were able to get a scholarship, but we wanted to represent families like our families with Phelan-McDermid that we're paying so much for everything else, the medical bills, the therapy bills. It's not always what you think, the families that need a scholarship. It's because we're paying so many other bills.
Yep.
And through that, the Science Museum contacted me, and there was a panel of parents that came together to represent special needs, children with special needs of all different ages. And it was one of the great things that came out of that was silent markers to identify to the employees and the volunteers, runners or lopers. And so we just walked around the space like this is a dangerous spot. I mean, if I were there with Hiroki, I'd be like, I'm watching that door
Yeah.
because he's going to bolt out that door.
Yeah.
And it goes, there's no protection. You cannot, like, he could climb, I don't know that he could, but he could fall over. And it's like 2 stories down. So
Yeah.
it was just things like
Yeah.
that where,
Yeah.
you know, if you have a purple wristband, it's a silent marker to the people around. Yeah, just
That's
kind of,
great.
because he won't, you know, in looking at him, you wouldn't necessarily know unless you stop and look for like a minute and you go, okay, something's different. And then you hear blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you would know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And so that's just, they probably wanted to be helpful all along, but didn't know how. And so being able to,
They don't know what to look for.
yeah, being able to advocate is, you know, and using these like, this is what we want, how are we going to get there, and being able to articulate that was, I mean, usually people want to be helpful. They don't know what to do, and they don't want to ask because it's rude, and you know, and you know, it's so it's great. I love that your church asked you, like, what can we do? I mean, that's a community. That's fantastic. Yeah, go ahead.
We sat on the dog session yesterday, and we have other children that wanted a dog, but I don't know if we're ready for that.
Yeah, yeah,
But we thought about the service dog thing.
Yeah.
We're just like, you know, is it really worth it?
yeah,
But one of the things that they brought up yesterday was, you have a dog wearing a service vest, and all of a sudden we said, okay, there's somebody here who has a special
yeah,
need.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and people, they said everybody, well, maybe not everybody, everybody loves dogs.
yeah,
So then there's something that sort of brings people, general public
Yeah,
around
yeah.
and say, special needs,
Yeah.
special dog,
yeah,
what's not to love?
yeah. I mean, it's sort of a marker that somebody might need assistance or something. But yeah. Have we got all the categories? So I guess we have just like maybe 10 minutes left. Any questions you have for Renata about her work with transition, especially if you have kids going into transition age in school? She knows a lot about that. And you used to be a special ed teacher too, didn't you? Yep. So Renata knows. Renata has all your school-based answers over here. I mostly have worked with adults, but any questions about like life course and transition and kind of thinking about it? And I will say that we really flew through this really quickly. If you're interested in diving into this more besides the resources, if you're like Minnesota Family Voices, they're called Good Life Groups, and they do them virtually, so I don't know if you can participate from other parts, where it's a group of families who get together, kind of work through this and share ideas and think about how they might implement some of these ideas in their family and making it work. It works for all your kids, so if you have a kid without a disability who's got a big transition coming up, it also works for them. I mean, it works. So Family Voices, if you just Google Family Voices Minnesota, they have information on their webpage. They're awesome, Family Voices. I'm sure Family Voices all over are helpful, but I know Minnesota's, and I know they're awesome. They do really good stuff. You can use this if you have parents who are aging to help them think about what they need in the future. This really works. People I work with have used this for changing jobs, for losing weight, for all kinds of things. So it really is a good way of thinking, and kind of, we don't always think about all the supports we actually have and make good use of them. So that's why I love the STAR is so helpful, because if you really start thinking about all the supports you actually have that maybe you don't tap into, can be really helpful. So any questions or thoughts? Thanks for sharing your experiences. I think that's always more interesting than me talking the whole time. So, any other questions? There's a resource page back there. It has links to the Disability Hub and to ICI's webpage and to the Charting Life Course Nexus, which is the main hub, and it has all kinds of things on here we didn't even talk on there that we didn't talk about today, to think about in terms of supporting someone to get live a good life. And then our emails are on there, so if you have questions later or you want resources, we're happy to dig them out for you and find them. If you don't live in Minnesota, you want to know something about going on in your state, if you email me, I'll find it. So, any other thoughts or questions? Yeah.